Hi everyone, I'm Caroline Zakari and I work in the Office of Civics and Community Services here at the Los Angeles Public Library. Welcome to today's program called Homeowners Know Your Rights. This program is brought to you by Public Counsel and the Los Angeles Public Library. Today, Jumana Bambot from Public Counsel will cover the rights of homeowners who experience financial hardship during the COVID-19 pandemic, are at risk of default in their mortgage, or are facing foreclosure. Ways to prevent foreclosure and how to access the free funds available for homeowners who are behind in their mortgages will also be discussed. We'll have a brief Q&A after the presentation, so please send us your questions throughout the program. Thank you, and take it away, Jumana.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. Our presentation today, as Caroline said, is a Know Your Rights presentation on foreclosure prevention, kind of geared towards homeowners. I'm a staff attorney at Public Counsel. We just want to talk a little bit about kind of what the foreclosure process is and kind of what you can do if you find yourself kind of in that process. A brief agenda. So today I'll do a quick introduction on kind of who Public Counsel is and what kind of services we offer. We'll discuss some basic terminology that your mortgage servicer kind of may be using to kind of help you better understand kind of the foreclosure process and kind of what your mortgage servicer does and what your options are. We will talk about the pre-foreclosure and foreclosure process and kind of go through both of those timelines. We'll talk about how to avoid foreclosure. We'll talk about COVID-specific foreclosure prevention options, including the California Mortgage Relief Program. And then finally, we'll take questions from the audience. One thing to quickly note, because this is being recorded, the information in this presentation is specific to California. And so this may not kind of apply to homeowners outside of the state of California. A little bit on who we are, Public Counsel. Public Counsel is a free legal services organization. We are based in Los Angeles County. The Consumer Rights and Economic Justice Project specifically kind of handles a wide array of consumer issues. You can see kind of a list on the slide here. And then, of course, Public Counsel, the larger organization, kind of handles issues even outside of that: immigration law, education law, homelessness prevention. But of course, today we're going to be focusing on foreclosure prevention. We do currently hold a foreclosure prevention clinic. We conduct it virtually over Zoom. So if you are at risk of foreclosure or kind of in the foreclosure process, or maybe you're not, but you have questions about your options, please contact us to schedule an appointment. The link is here on the slide, publiccounsel.org/services/debt collection foreclosure fraud. So we're going to start things off with some basic terminology. The kind of first term that you may see and hear kind of during this presentation is mortgage servicer. So a mortgage servicer is the company that sends you your mortgage statements and handles the day-to-day tasks of managing your loan. The mortgage servicer may not be the same company that owns your loan. So the mortgage servicer kind of essentially is the middleman. They're going to kind of they're the ones who are going to kind of communicate. If you're in foreclosure, they're the ones who are going to be communicating your options to you. You'll very rarely interact with the owner of the loan itself. Oftentimes folks don't even know kind of who owns their loan, and that can, the ownership of the loan can also change hands. The next term is delinquent. So delinquent simply means being late on your payments. Your loan can become delinquent when you miss a payment or if you don't make a full payment by the due date. Being delinquent doesn't automatically mean you're in foreclosure or that the foreclosure, that your home will be foreclosed upon. It just means that you're late in payments. It's kind of it's the first step to the pre-foreclosure process. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in the next few slides. The next term is forbearance. So forbearance is one loss mitigation option where the servicer allows you to temporarily pay your mortgage either at a lower rate or to stop paying your mortgage kind of altogether for a period of time. This kind of forbearance period, we kind of really encourage folks during this time to kind of get a sense of, to have a plan for the future, because forbearance is temporary. It's only going to be for a short period of time that you'll be allowed to stop making your payments entirely. During this time, interest shouldn't accrue. It shouldn't be reported to the credit reporting agency. So it's really kind of meant for kind of it's a short period kind of meant for you to kind of get a sense of what your options are after the forbearance period ends. Foreclosure is when either the lender or the servicer takes back the property after the borrower fails to make mortgage payments. It kind of doesn't happen overnight. There is a process to it, and there are requirements about what a servicer has to do before it can foreclose on a home. There are options kind of for homeowners that they can kind of take advantage of during the foreclosure process to kind of avoid that final step of foreclosure. The final term here on the slide is loss mitigation. So loss mitigation is the steps that mortgage servicers take to work with the borrower to avoid foreclosure. A little background on the foreclosure process. Most foreclosures in California are non-judicial foreclosures, meaning they do not go through the courts. So the servicer or the lender can foreclose on a homeowner's home without, ever filing a lawsuit. Under federal law, a mortgage servicer cannot begin the formal foreclosure process until the borrower is more than 120 days delinquent. And delinquent, again, means to be late on your payments. That 120-day period between the delinquency and the start of the formal foreclosure process is called pre-foreclosure. We recommend that you contact a HUD certified housing counselor as soon as possible if you become delinquent on your mortgage. So, we suggest don't kind of wait until that pre-foreclosure process is over. Don't kind of wait until you're further along in that pre-foreclosure process. Kind of reach out as soon as possible if you become delinquent on your mortgage. And a HUD certified housing counselor is kind of someone who is certified by HUD, by the Department of Housing and Urban Development, and kind of someone who can advise on several different things, but including kind of foreclosure prevention and kind of what happens if you fall delinquent on your mortgage and what your options are. And we have the link here on the slide to find a HUD certified housing counselor local to you. So this is the pre-foreclosure process. So kind of the first step of the pre-foreclosure process is the borrower falls behind in payments. And from that time, the shortest amount of time that the pre-foreclosure process can take is 120 days. Kind of important to highlight, and kind of during the pre-foreclosure process, is that the servicer is required to contact the borrower in several different ways, in fact, by phone, by written notice. The servicer is required to reach out to the borrower to discuss loss mitigation, to discuss kind of what options are available to the borrower to help them avoid foreclosure. Sometimes the servicers don't do what they're supposed to do. They don't reach out to the borrowers as they are supposed to. And so we really encourage kind of folks to either reach out to the servicer yourself to kind of get a sense of what your options are, or to reach out to a HUD certified housing counselor using that link on the previous slide, to kind of have somebody who can reach out to the servicer for you to get a sense of what your options are, during this period. The pre-foreclosure process ends when a notice of default is recorded. And the notice of default being recorded begins the formal foreclosure process. The notice of default is a public document. It gives the borrowers 3 months to cure the default, meaning to become current, to repay kind of what has fallen delinquent on the mortgage. And a copy of that notice of default is mailed to the borrower. The notice of default, the notice of default is a public document. It's kind of recorded in the public records. And so kind of oftentimes what borrowers will see is that once that notice of default is recorded, they'll kind of start receiving kind of mail from a whole host of folks, from real estate agents, from bankruptcy attorneys, because kind of this is the first time when the foreclosure is made public, when kind of folks outside of the homeowner know that they've kind of fallen behind on their mortgage. At least 85 days later, the notice of sale can be recorded. So if the borrower does not cure the default, the servicer can record a notice of sale up to 5 days before the end of that 3-month period, that 3-month to cure period. The foreclosure sale date must be at least 3 months and 20 days after recording of the notice of default. So that notice of sale has to give at least 20 days notice of the sale date. The notice of sale will be mailed to the borrower, and if different, the property address, and of course it needs to contain the time and the place of the sale. 5 business days before the sale date is the last chance for the borrower to temporarily halt foreclosure proceedings by submitting a complete loss mitigation application. This is kind of really a last resort option. We don't kind of advise that folks wait until 5 business days before the sale date. It's kind of a very stressful process, but this does exist. If kind of the borrower submits the complete loss mitigation application before this timeline, the servicer is required to kind of stop foreclosure proceedings to review that application. 5 business days before the sale date is also the borrower's last opportunity to reinstate the mortgage by paying all past due payments, costs, and expenses. So everything that has come due up until that time, if the borrower kind of pays that entire amount, that's called reinstating the mortgage, the borrower could kind of exit the foreclosure process. And then, of course, after that comes the foreclosure sale. The foreclosure sale is the borrower's last chance to redeem the property by paying off the loan in full. So this doesn't just mean becoming current with what has become owed. It means paying off the entire loan. If the borrower is able to do that before the foreclosure sale, then kind of the foreclosure process ends. However, if the borrower can't do that, the borrower is no longer the homeowner after that sale. And I just want to kind of reiterate that we really do encourage folks to reach out for help kind of as early in this process as possible. After a sale, it's very difficult to kind of undo the sale. It's very difficult to kind of restore title to the original borrower after that sale occurs. Postponement of foreclosure sale. So if the sale is postponed for at least 10 business days, the borrower must be notified in writing of the new sale date and time within 5 business days of the postponement. If the sale, however, is postponed for over 1 year, and this can kind of either be due because the servicer postponed it once for over a year, or postponed it multiple times, and all of that together is over 1 year, the servicer has to record a new notice of sale. So that was kind of a lot of information to go through. There kind of are a lot of different kind of requirements, options during the foreclosure timeline. So this is essentially the gist of it. The pre-foreclosure process kind of begins when the borrower falls delinquent on their mortgage and lasts 120 days. The formal foreclosure process begins when a notice of default is recorded. The notice of default, of course, gives 3 months for the borrower to cure the default, meaning to kind of pay, what is delinquent. And the notice kind of, if the borrower doesn't do that, a notice of sale can be recorded, which has to give the borrower 20 days of notice before the sale date. So the minimum amount of time that this entire foreclosure process can take is 231 days. It can take longer than that, but this is the shortest period of time that the pre-foreclosure and the foreclosure process can take. So after the foreclosure sale, what happens? The borrower does not have to move immediately after the sale. There are a few options after a foreclosure sale. Kind of the first option is to negotiate cash for keys, to negotiate kind of something with the new owner to kind of help the borrower land on their feet. And the kind of new owner may be incentivized to do this because the other option is for the new owner to evict kind of the previous owner. And, of course, kind of that accrues costs. And so, to avoid that, the new owner may be willing to kind of negotiate some amount of cash for keys. If the borrower doesn't end up doing that, they can also wait for an eviction and an eventual lockout order. Of course, this is something we try to avoid because an eviction kind of on somebody's record can have kind of many other consequences. It's a very stressful process. The lockout order happens very quickly. So how does the homeowner avoid foreclosure? Kind of the first step here really is to keep all documents that you receive from your mortgage servicer, including any monthly statements and any notices or letters about delinquency and foreclosure. I think kind of it's very much human nature if, you're counting on receiving bad news from your servicer that you want to avoid it, that you don't kind of want to address it, you don't want to open that mail. But it is kind of very important that not only do you keep all those documents, you open it and you read it because, those kind of notices or letters may kind of contain loss mitigation options. They may contain kind of options that the homeowner can take advantage of to stay in their home. It doesn't all have to be bad news. So kind of we talked kind of generally about what loss mitigation means at the beginning of the presentation. These are kind of a few kind of different options that fall under loss mitigation. So we talked about forbearance, meaning kind of to temporarily stop paying on your mortgage for a short period of time. This doesn't necessarily mean that that amount, say you receive a 3-month forbearance, it doesn't mean that those 3 months that you don't pay, you don't have to pay them back. And you should kind of pay very careful attention to the terms of the forbearance because the servicer may be asking you to pay back that 3-month amount at the end of the forbearance period. So you just kind of want to be prepared and kind of as I mentioned in the beginning of the presentation, use that forbearance period to figure out what are your long-term kind of options to kind of to catch up on your mortgage and to stay in your home. The next loss mitigation option is repayment. So let's say kind of you have a temporary cut in your salary, but kind of your salary is kind of restored to what it once was. You may kind of be able to do a repayment, and a repayment basically means that you kind of return to your regular payments, and the amount that you are delinquent is kind of split across the time period. So you're paying a little above your regular monthly payments to get caught up on your loan. Another loss mitigation option is deferral. So a deferral is kind of when the amount that you're delinquent is pushed to the end of the loan. And then a loan modification is kind of any change in the terms of the loan. So it could be kind of a change in the interest rate of the loan. It could be a change in the kind of term of the loan, the amount of time. Maybe it's extended from 30 years to 40 years. So a loan modification is simply kind of a change in the terms of the loan that hopefully makes the loan kind of more affordable to pay off. The next kind of option is refinancing. So refinancing means to take out a new loan to pay off and replace your old loan. This is something you should speak to an expert about. Kind of we're seeing that refinancing is a less feasible option with kind of interest rates being as high as they are. But if kind of a refinance is something that you're considering, you should certainly speak to an expert. Another option is a sale or short sale. So it may be that despite kind of all of these options that are offered, the home is just no longer affordable. and the borrower kind of can't continue to make any payments kind of in the amount that in kind of according to the original loan terms, according to kind of any modified terms, it's just not feasible. The option, the kind of only option for that borrower may be a sale. A short sale kind of is a sale of the home for less than what you owe on your mortgage, and the servicer kind of may be willing to take on the cost. So if you kind of owe more than if you sell your home for less than what you owe, the kind of servicer may be willing to take on the cost. Kind of in California, I practice in Los Angeles. Folks often have a lot of equity built up in their homes, and so even though kind of the sale of the home doesn't feel like the best option, and folks often want to stay in their homes, it's kind of better to assess your options as early in the process, and if the sale is the only option, to kind of recover that equity kind of earlier in the process before you continue to kind of accrue late fees or foreclosure fees that kind of eat up the equity from your home. The kind of last thing on the slide here is for reverse mortgages. So this is specifically for seniors. There are options for reverse mortgages, including kind of payment plans and at-risk extensions. And if you do have a reverse mortgage and you're unable to kind of keep up with payments, with kind of maintaining the property on your reverse mortgage or payments, then we encourage you to reach out to Public Counsel to kind of get a sense of what your options are. So kind of unfortunately, something that kind of happens when folks are in foreclosure, and especially after that notice of default stage, when it's public record that the homeowner is in foreclosure, kind of folks will kind of come out of the woodwork. And so we wanted to include some information here on foreclosure rescue scams. So a few kind of red flags to keep an eye out for. Anyone kind of asking you to sign over title to avoid foreclosure. Maybe this person is promising to help you make payments on your mortgage, or is promising to make you a loan or lend you money, or is promising to help you kind of get a loan using their credit. These are all red flags to watch out for, and may really kind of be someone trying to take advantage of the equity that you've built up in your home. Another thing to look out for, maybe after the notice of default stage, you're receiving kind of letters from bankruptcy attorneys encouraging you to file for bankruptcy. Bankruptcy is not a cure-all to a foreclosure, and kind of very rarely addresses a foreclosure. Folks sometimes file for bankruptcy when they're in the foreclosure process, because when you file for bankruptcy, you kind of a process goes into effect called an automatic stay, which can postpone a foreclosure date, but it doesn't resolve the underlying issue. It can kind of create more issues actually by filing for bankruptcy. Public Counsel does have a bankruptcy clinic where we offer kind of free consults. So if you're considering, if you're wondering whether kind of bankruptcy is a good option for you, you can always sign up and get a free consult. If you have any concerns, we do encourage you to get a second opinion from one of the resources on the resource slide, which will be at the end of the presentation, before you sign any documents. We encourage you to reach out to Public Counsel or to a HUD certified housing counselor and just get a second opinion. It doesn't hurt. Kind of one thing to note here is that we don't want that folks don't reach out because kind of, they feel embarrassed, or because someone may have taken advantage of them. We've seen kind of folks at all levels kind of fall victim to these foreclosure rescue scams. The kind of people who do it, they're very good at kind of persuading you otherwise. And homeowners are often kind of, if you're in foreclosure, it's a very stressful situation. You're facing the loss of your home. And so, it may kind of even be easier for someone to convince you that, they can help you, that they can kind of help you save your home. So we do kind of encourage you to reach out as early in this process as possible and get a sense for what your options are. So next, I want to talk a little more specifically about COVID loss mitigation. There are kind of several options out there, kind of specific to that arose out of the COVID-19 pandemic, because a lot of folks kind of experienced financial hardship during that time. And the key first question here is this a federally backed mortgage? And kind of the reason that this is important is because there are options specific to federally backed mortgages that you can take advantage of, if your mortgage is in fact a federally backed mortgage. Essentially, what is a federally backed mortgage? A federally backed mortgage falls into one of these 4 categories. It's either FHA insured, it's guaranteed by Fannie Mae or Freddie Mac, or it is, or the homeowner receives it through the VA or USDA. Our experience is folks that have a VA or USDA mortgage often know that they have a VA or USDA mortgage. As to the other 2 options, Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac have great lookup tools that you can use to find out, if they guarantee your mortgage. And you can also always ask your servicer to find out whether it's federally backed. So if your mortgage is federally backed, post-COVID options generally fall into 2 categories. The first is that you are allowed to resume your pre-COVID monthly payment and defer mortgage arrears to the end of the loan. So you're allowed to continue making the payments that you are making kind of pre-COVID, and anything that kind of the amount that you've fallen delinquent on is moved to the end of the loan. So kind of this is meant for folks who had kind of a temporary, who kind of had temporary kind of financial hardship because of COVID, but maybe kind of their salary has been restored, their hours have been restored, they're kind of back to where they were pre-COVID. The second option is to modify the set loan terms to target a 20 to 25% reduction in monthly payments to make that loan kind of more affordable going forward. Important to note that borrowers should not have to submit extensive documents to access these options. These are meant to be very streamlined options, and you shouldn't kind of be given the runaround. You shouldn't kind of constantly be asked for follow-up documents to get access to these options. Borrowers also do not need to have been on a COVID forbearance to access these options. So kind of the COVID forbearance was available, even if the homeowner didn't take advantage of it. It doesn't mean that these options are not options for them. They can still take advantage of these options. So federally backed mortgages are kind of the majority of the mortgages out there in the market. There are also private mortgages. Private mortgages they may offer the same options as federally backed mortgages, just because there are some, federally backed mortgages are such a kind of large part of the market. So they may just be taking the same options and offering those to borrowers. And so kind of really the key here is to get a sense of what your options are. Requests for information are one way to find out what your loss mitigation options are. Kind of private, the servicers should not be asking you for lump sum demand. So kind of if you've fallen behind, over a period of time, say like 12 months, they should not be asking you to repay kind of that entire amount all at one time. That's just kind of unreasonable for anybody to be able to do that. So do kind of reach out kind of either yourself or through a HUD certified housing counselor and find out what your options are, because often there are options, even when kind of they're not, these private mortgages are not required to offer them. So next we're going to turn to the California Mortgage Relief Program. The California Mortgage Relief Program kind of arose out of the American Rescue Plan Act. The American Rescue Plan Act created the Homeowners Assistance Fund, which is a federal program that helps homeowners who have been financially impacted by COVID-19 pay their mortgage or other home expenses. So California's HAF program is the California Mortgage Relief Program. the California Mortgage Relief Program, the California HAF program, those two terms are used interchangeably. So the program has a ceiling of $80,000, and that can be used for past due mortgage payments, delinquent property taxes, for help with late taxes and homeowners insurance for reverse mortgages, and to reduce or eliminate a COVID-related partial claim, second mortgage, or loan deferral. So kind of that latter piece, I think, is the one that maybe is not so self-explanatory, but a partial claim or a loan deferral is when the amount that is delinquent is the kind of two devices, but they kind of, the effect is the same, that the amount that accrued is pushed towards the end of the loan to help the borrower become current on the loan. The cap here is $80,000, and so it kind of can be used for any one of these things or multiple of these things, so long as they together take up $80,000. So kind of folks can also submit multiple applications. If kind of, say, for example, they submitted one application and received $20,000 in assistance, they can submit another application and receive up to $60,000 in assistance. Yes, the maximum assistance is $80,000 per household. Very important here, there's no cost to apply, there is no charge to submit an application, and the funds received never have to be paid back. This is a grant program, it's not a loan, so you know, you don't have to worry about paying back those funds. A few eligibility requirements. The first is that the borrower must have faced a pandemic-related financial hardship after January 21st, 2020. And that is true of all of this. I'm sorry, the check marks aren't showing up properly on the slide, but that is true of all four. There are household income and other financial eligibility requirements. There are a few requirements, and you can visit that website on the slide, camortgagerelief.org, to see what those requirements are. The kind of primary requirement is that the combined household income for residents 18 and over cannot exceed 150% of the area median income for the county. If you live in Los Angeles, that threshold is actually quite high. And so, you know, I would encourage you to kind of check the website. There is a calculator there, and see if you're eligible. There are a few other eligibility requirements to take a look at there as well. You must currently own and occupy the property in California as your primary residence, and that property can include up to 4 units on site. For mortgage relief, the servicer must be participating in the California Mortgage Relief Program, and you can take a look at the participating servicers on camortgagerelief.org. And then the mortgage must also meet mortgage origination requirements. So these are kind of the terms that were set out at the beginning of the mortgage when the borrower first took out the mortgage. There are certain kind of requirements that have to be met for folks to be eligible for California mortgage relief. The borrower must have missed at least 2 payments by August 1st, 2023, and they must currently be behind on their mortgage. For the property tax program, they must have missed at least 1 payment by August 1st, 2023. And then for the partial claim loan deferral program, the grant must reduce or eliminate COVID-related partial claim second mortgages and loan deferrals that were received during or after January 2020. There is kind of a complete list of eligibility requirements, so you can visit californiamortgagerelief.org to see a complete list of those requirements. You can also reach out to a HUD-certified housing counselor to kind of walk you through those requirements and determine if you're eligible to apply. This is the website here on the screen to submit an application. Applications are available in several different languages: English, Spanish, Chinese, Korean, Vietnamese, and Tagalog. And they're contact center also provides assistance in other languages. And then again, I know I've said this multiple times, but if you need assistance, a HUD certified housing counselor may be able to help. You can visit the website here on the screen. You can also call them at this phone number, 800-569-4287, to speak to somebody. And that is it from me. I will, if there are any questions.
Hi, okay, I'm back. Okay, let me go see what we have for questions. So the first question we have is, what do I do if I've fallen behind on mortgage payments?
Thanks, Caroline. Great question. So I think kind of the first step here is to figure out what your options are. Whether you're in the pre-foreclosure stage or kind of the foreclosure stage, kind of figure out what your options are. And maybe that means kind of reaching out to the servicer yourself if you don't kind of feel comfortable or want the assistance of someone else, to find a HUD certified housing counselor who can kind of help you reach out. HUD certified housing counselors kind of often have relationships with kind of the big mortgage servicers. And so they may be better able to navigate kind of speaking to a servicer to help you figure out what your options are. You can also apply to our foreclosure prevention clinics that we hold twice a month, and we can kind of direct you to housing counselors through that clinic as well.
Okay, great. Thank you. Let's see what we have next. Okay, we have a question from Mara Panetta. Does Public Counsel, do they, mom and pop landlords, who do you represent? Like, do you have like the smaller landlords, or like what's your client? Yeah.
Sure. So I can speak for kind of my team specifically. I don't know that we. So if kind of you're a homeowner and you kind of meet our other kind of eligibility requirements, we can kind of offer you assistance. You don't kind of have to figure that out yourself. You can submit an application and we'll review that application and let you know. Thank you for the question.
Okay. Thank you, Jimana. The next question I have is, what does it mean if my mortgage servicer offers me a forbearance?
Yeah. So kind of a forbearance, as we said in the beginning of the presentation, is kind of when you can pay either kind of a reduced amount or nothing at all for a period of time. This is a great question because we're kind of hearing through our kind of partner housing counseling agencies that folks are being offered kind of 3-month forbearances. And kind of, I think, as I said before, it's important to know what happens after that forbearance period, and might require to pay that 3-month amount after the forbearance period ends. Because if so, I really need to get a sense of what are my kind of long-term options. Can I afford to pay that payment? Do I need to ask for a loan modification? What do I need to do kind of during that time to allow me to kind of catch up in the long term?
Okay. We have another question about the slide with the contact numbers, because we have the resources slide.
Sure.
Just
the slide with the contact numbers.
Because this is for the resources slide. We have that up already. That's like the Public Counsel contacts.
Sure.
Let me see.
We have maybe the HUD certified housing counselor slide.
Oh, okay. It's from Lisa T. Well, we have this one. Is there another, do you have another slide? Because you already have this one up.
That's
I don't
right.
see what.
So let's see. So we have this slide with the HUD certified housing counselor contact information. There's a phone number here. Okay. I think that's the only other contact slide that we have.
Okay. Yeah, that's the one that I'm seeing too with the phone number. Okay.
Great.
Thank you so much, Joanna. Also, if you get a notice of default, one more question that I have, how
Sure.
long do I have until it's a foreclosure sale? Like, how long does the process last?
Yeah, it's a good question. So the notice of default begins the formal foreclosure process, and the formal foreclosure process can, at minimum, be 3 months and 21 days. So the notice of default gives that 3 month period to cure, and then the notice of sale has to be given at least 20 days before a sale date. So if a notice of default has been recorded, you have 3 months and 21 days from that date that it's been recorded until a sale can take place at the earliest. It can always take place later, but at the earliest, 3 months and 21
Three
days.
months into, okay.
And
Thank you so much. And then there's Lisa had a follow-up question.
okay,
She's saying that it was before this slide. I'm
okay,
trying to find it too on my end.
maybe
Um,
this one.
uh, Lisa, if it was this slide, can you type in the comments? Because I don't, let me see.
I think we have this one. I think we also have one at the beginning with our foreclosure clinic link. That's also the one on the resources slide.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm looking because I see the presentation too. Like I'm trying to find it also.
Right.
I think that was, let me double check too. That's, okay. So, but if they have questions, they can contact, right? Like if they can contact you, and if it was
Yes.
something that you can send, okay,
Yes.
okay.
Yes. Of course. Of course.
Okay, perfect. It was resolved. That's great.
Oh,
Lisa
wonderful.
got her information. Thank you so much. Okay, let me see if there's any. If we have any more questions? Okay, let me wait a minute. Okay. Okay, so I don't see anything else on my end. So I'm going to say thank you again, Jimana, for a great presentation. I always learn a lot from these things, like things I never knew. And if anyone did miss any part of this presentation, it will be available again for viewing on LAPL's YouTube channel. The URL is youtube.com/Los Angeles Library. Also, I wanted to let everyone know that in a few weeks, October's financial planning month begins. We're going to have two streaming programs during the month, one on your savings and one on investor protection. And we're going to have a financial planning day on Saturday, October 7th at Central Library. So for more information on these programs and all of our upcoming financial planning month programs, you can visit our financial planning month calendar, lapl.org/financial planning, and then all the information is there. So thank you again, Jumana, and I hope everyone has a great rest of the day. Thank you so much. Bye bye.